Hello and welcome to the Gridiron Week 5 Waiver Wire Report. And as we're starting to get more injuries and games being hit by COVID, depth on your bench, the waiver wire is getting more and more important by the fantasy week. And so we're here to tell you exactly who you should be looking for. And I've said it every week. Even if you're in a hole right now, there's still enough of the season left for you to drag yourself into the playoffs and go on a late surge with the right pickups on the waiver wire. I'm Will Gavin, and as always, joined from fake teams, Pete Rogers is with me. Pete, good week for you?
Yeah, pretty good week. And to your point about, if you've lost all your games so far, look, the Philadelphia Eagles are leading the NFC East, and they're 1-3-1 or whatever crazy crap is going on. So yes, you can certainly make a comeback and make a playoff push regardless of how your season has started.
Now, before we get into our top 5 pickups on the waiver wire for this week, just to mention for T. Higgins, because we did mention him last week. Not enough of you went and picked him up because he's still available in plenty of leagues. John Ross was a healthy scratch again. So we don't want to repeat ourselves. We want to give you 5 new names to go and pick up. But Pete, T. Higgins has to be owned in every league.
Oh, yeah. He's emerged as that number 2 wide receiver for the Bengals alongside Tyler Boyd. He's replaced AJ Green. AJ Green and John Ross, I think, should not be rostered on any leagues right now. I know it's crazy to say. And T. Higgins has emerged as that number 2 receiver in an offense that's passed the ball like 50 times a game. So you want that. You love that. So definitely T. Higgins should be rostered in every league.
With that in mind, let's get to our top 5 waiver wire pickups of the week. And coming in at 5 is the running back Chase Edmonds, a combination of possibly opportunity due to a benching, but also a minor injury as well. Might see Chase Edmonds getting a lot more play for Arizona.
Yeah, so Kenyan Drake's start has been less than ideal. If you're a Kenyan Drake manager, I'm sure you feel the pain, but Edmonds has really locked down that pass game role. It's similar to kind of how I feel the Browns backfield has been, right? Drake has been the predominant rusher and Edmonds has been the predominant pass catching back. Now, that in and of itself has been great for Edmonds and has given Edmonds like a running back 3 floor pretty reliably each week. Like you mentioned, Kenyan Drake did suffer an injury. They're saying it's mostly he just got the wind knocked out of it, something to monitor. And if Cliff Kingsbury does feel like switching up this backfield and giving Edmonds a little more time or more touches on the ground, obviously that would boost Edmonds' value. Right now, I do think that things are going to remain pretty balanced. Edmonds hasn't been dramatically better than Drake in terms of rushing, but that passing work that Edmonds is seeing is still reliable enough that you should be rostering him, and he is a weekly running back 3 to 4 with some high upside depending on the matchup.
And let's not forget that they're averaging about 3.5 yards per attempt in the air. So that means a lot of running backs out of the backfield seeing the ball because Kyler Murray clearly doesn't want to throw it downfield. Let's get to Jags wide receiver Laviska Shenault, rookie coming into the league this year, and a guy who just feels like week on week is improving.
Yeah, his role in this offense has steadily increased. He's coming off of obviously his best game, 86 yards through the air, as well as an extra 5 yards on the ground. And that's for me the biggest thing that I love about Laviska Shenault. Not only his role is improving, he's kind of becoming this running mate to DJ Chark, but also just his flexibility in the offense. And for PPR leagues, that's what you want. I mean, he's a guy who they've shown he's getting multiple rushes a game while also seeing, 4 to 6 targets so far this season. If that role continues to grow and we get to see both rushing and passing, that's value that you can't pass up in fantasy, especially for an offense that, again, like the Bengals, the Jaguars are always going to be in shootouts. Every game's going to be a shootout if they hope to win it because their defense just isn't good enough to keep offenses down. So the more they're passing, the more they're moving that ball around, the more Laviska Shenault's going to be involved.
Now, anytime you draft a Los Angeles Charger, you're always putting yourself at the risk of the Chargers curse. And this week, Austin Eckler, the latest man to fall. So there's a couple of names here who are potentially available. I mean, Joshua Kelly owned quite widely as well after seeing a lot of the play on the ground early in the season. But we're going with Justin Jackson. Tell me for why, Pete Rogers.
Yeah, as an Austin Eckler manager, his injury is devastating. Let the record show. I really still like Joshua Kelly. If he's in your leagues, you should be targeting him. But he has had some fumble issues recently, fumbling this week and the prior week. And that could open the door for Justin Jackson to come in and see a lot more work. Now, we've seen the Chargers implement this kind of dual backfield with Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly. And presumably without Eckler, it could stand to reason Joshua Kelly would be in line for the bulk of the share, while Justin Jackson would still see enough work to be a reliable fantasy player. But the main reason to go for Justin Jackson is if, for whatever reason, Anthony Lynn is uncertain with Joshua Kelly, given his fumbling tendency so far, or just wants to kind of make it maybe a more 50-50 split, Justin Jackson then is by far the more available back. And we've seen he's been in this offense before, so could take that starting gig or at least a predominant role in this backfield pretty early.
Up next at 2, a man who we've discussed in plenty of meetings for the Waiver Wire report before. And the fact is a guy that with an offense that threw for 5 touchdowns this week, that has had some injury concerns as well, and has finally Tom Brady starting to find some connections. Scotty Miller feels must own to me.
Yeah, the whole Buccaneers wide receiver room is pretty banged up. Chris Godwin is expected to still miss 1 to 2 weeks, and Mike Evans is also banged up. Scotty Miller is dealing with his own injuries as well, but he was healthy on the field this weekend. 7 targets, 5 catches, 83 yards, and a touchdown. He's probably, if he suits up again for week 5 against the Chicago Bears, I mean, he's going to become a must-own wide receiver and a reliable wide receiver too. Like you said, this offense, man, Tom Brady, the guy doesn't age. I don't know what he's drinking, but like, I would love some of that because he is just chucking the ball around with ease. And with Mike Evans banged up, with OJ Howard now on IR, the targets that he has to are diminishing quickly, which only boosts Scotty Miller value.
And number 1 on the Gridiron Waiver Wire report this week. And from an Orlando Apollo, an AAF star, to a priority NFL waiver ad. The Browns are running the ball so well, but they're running the ball with a banged up backfield now. And so suddenly a name that I did not think we'd be discussing too quickly on this show this year, Diontae Johnson, has become our must add of the week.
I mean, how can you not want to have a name Diontae Johnson on your fantasy team? It's just as perfect. So Nick Chubb got rolled up on against the Cowboys. He's expected to miss 6 weeks with an MCL injury. This opens the door for a huge workload alongside Kareem Hunt. And Diontae Johnson came in spell of Chubb, and we saw him 13 carries, 95 yards. Like that's great numbers right off the bat. And now he's only going to be more involved. Kareem Hunt is also, they're worried that he might have aggravated his groin injury that he's been dealing with. So Johnson could be in line for even more work in the coming weeks. Certainly something to monitor, even if Hunt is healthy and is good to go for week 5. Johnson, I mean, will likely see enough of a role that you should be rostering him and likely starting him.
And don't be fooled by some low projections, potentially, depending on the league that you play this week, because they do face the number 1 defense in the Colts this weekend. They've also got the Steelers coming up. You know, those aren't great fantasy matchups necessarily, but it's that value of a guy going on IR for 6+ weeks. He's available right now. Don't be the guy that in a week's time is regretting not picking Diontae Johnson up and does it now and is ahead of the curve, because I think he's going to be added left, right, and center this week. Pete, if people want to find out more information, you do a top 10 every week over at Fake Teams. Where can people find more of your fine work?
Yeah, so I do a top 10 list, faketeams.com. You can also check me out on Twitter, talking fantasy all the time there at Pete M. Rogers.
Wonderful stuff. Pete Rogers, don't forget to check out the Gridiron Show weekly podcast. Brian Billick, Super Bowl winning head coach of the Ravens, will be joining us. And this week, obviously, we're going to be talking about Bill O'Brien being sacked as both general manager and head coach of the Houston Texans. So that'll be going up on Wednesday morning. In the meantime, this has been the Gridiron Waiver Wire Report.